That's why we end up with 18 bikes.
Yeah, you're right.
N plus one.
N plus one. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Bing slouches.
We've got Chad Terry on the couch today.
Howdy.
Shield.
We're going to talk about his journey in the bike industry, a little bit about the pandemic, and then we're going to kind of go into how to pick the right bike for yourself.
And then, the questions you get asked the most, too. Like maybe some pro tips from a bike shop owner.
Some pro tips. We'll do it.
Yeah.
We got to introduce the other.
Oh, well, this is Ivy. This is the new dog on the couch. She's clearly really concerned about the show right now. But I am Coach Dale Sanford.
I am Coach Bryant Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. Every BPC coach is trained in our 5 pillars coaching system that has been developed over the last 11 years through our work with athletes of all ages and ability levels, from fresh off couches like these to world championship competitors. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com, checking Facebook and YouTube at Build Peak Compete, and all up on that Instagram at BPC Performance.
Sweet. We need to get a little tag for Ivy from the bottom, a little lower here.
Yeah.
We do. What's your social media handles? Those
It
want to
is
check it out.
Bikes Plus Memphis on Instagram.
Bam.
The
Check it out.
Insta. All right, so we got Chad Terry on the couch today. So Chad, a lot has kind of gone on in the last 12 months.
Sure has.
And, the bike industry has changed significantly for better or for worse. So, give everybody an idea. I mean, you've been in the bike industry a long time. So let's hear a little bit about your history in bikes.
Gotcha. Well, obviously started out as a kid and riding around on my bike and loved it. It provided freedom. And so, since I was a young kid, that's what we did. And
Helmets or no helmets? Uh-oh.
No helmets. No helmets. That
the
was,
good old days.
That was the 80s.
No helmets and sweet jumps.
Exactly. That was the 80s. That was no helmets and really sharp pedals.
Oh, yeah.
Very sharp pedals.
Still got the scars and the shins, huh?
Yes. Kind of, got into riding a good bit. Grew up here in Collierville and raced BMX bikes as a kid. I have a brother that's 2 years older, and him and I were both into it and grew up racing BMX bikes. We used to race at the fairgrounds. Used to have an indoor racetrack.
Really?
Yeah, it was super cool. Absolutely freezing cold in there.
Okay.
It was the wintertime place to race BMX bikes, but it was inside the fairgrounds.
So dry at least, right?
It was dry. And then in Shelby Farms, that everybody knows, the racetrack out there, they built that, I forget what year, but at Kennedy Park is where they used to race outside. They closed that down and then built the one at Shelby Farms.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
So
good history there.
Yeah, it's really cool. So obviously the Shelby Farms track has kind of had its ups and downs, and it's made a big comeback over the last couple of years. Yeah. So it's awesome to see that again. Mm-hmm. But So there was a bike shop in Collierville at the time, Bike World, and family owned that, and they were moving to Arizona. Okay. And so they needed to sell the business. Gotcha. And my dad purchased it as a side business, and my brother and I grew up working in the store after school and summers and things like that. So I kind of started doing that when I was 14 years old.
I was going to say, was that legal?
I was going to say.
Legal labor?
Child labor laws don't matter if it's your kids.
I don't know if my dad paid me.
It doesn't, it doesn't have to.
That's true. It doesn't count.
Because he put food on your table.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not quite sure if he paid me or not.
We're a registered employee.
Yeah, exactly. So did that, and so just kind of, that was 30 plus years ago, So just kind of always into it, enjoyed retail, enjoyed bikes. I went to the University of Tennessee. I worked at a bike shop there part-time during school, so kind of continued with that.
Yeah, it's not like you were so over it that you got away from it. No, clearly you still enjoyed it.
Still enjoyed it. I graduated with a forestry degree from the University of Tennessee.
Man.
Be a Mountie?
So
Canadian Mountie?
I did work for the National Park Service for 6 months.
There you go.
Really? There you go.
Yeah. Decided for whatever reason that it wasn't for me. Moved back to Memphis. Went to grad school at Memphis. Got my MBA there at the University of Memphis. And during that time, my parents still owned the bicycle store, and I wanted to work while I was going to school.
Yeah.
And
you requested pay this time.
I did request pay.
Okay.
I did. I went to school at night, and when that degree was finished, I had grown the business, the bike shop, and decided I wanted to make a living at that. And I had gotten married. My wife was pregnant during the whole span of going to school at night. It took me like 2 years since I was just going at night and working full time, and decided to buy the business from my parents. And
the rest, as they say.
Well, maybe not so much.
Not yet.
Because I had a merger about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right, yeah.
So Karen Malagorski.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long.
Really?
It's been about, at least 4 years, maybe 5. Yeah. Wow. It flies by. I know. Is it not crazy?
I blanked out all last year. So it could have been.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So Karen has a 30-year history with Bikes Plus, and her father, who started that, was ready to retire. So Karen and I got together and decided to merge the businesses.
Okay.
And
so that took you from what, one store to 4, right? Or 3? 3. Okay.
Yep.
So Bartlett,
Germantown,
Collierville.
Yep. So yeah.
Awesome.
Now we can say the rest is history.
That's exactly right.
Well, I mean, things have obviously been crazy over the last year in the bike industry.
Yes.
On all fronts. So, what has been what have been the highs and the lows of the last year in the bike industry with the pandemic and people?
Yeah, were you hitting February, March, going, "Oh crap, what are we gonna do?" And then suddenly,
definitely. Fortunate enough to say more highs and lows.
Oh, right? For sure, right?
Some stress added in there. But about, I guess it's almost about a year ago, maybe another week or so, started hearing about the shutdowns, and really didn't know what was going to happen. Obviously, Karen and I jumped on it right away and started making contingency plans. She did an amazing job putting together a contingency plan that we worked off and had different scenarios. But the biggest thing was, are we going to be shut down?
Exactly. Are you going to be deemed essential or not?
Yeah.
Right?
Right, exactly. We were fortunate enough to be deemed essential.
Yeah.
And
because of travel, right? The travel based.
It was
transit.
A little bit of that. The service side of things. Okay. Yeah.
Well, there's probably people that need to use a bike to commute, and so then you would need to be able to provide them with services to keep them going.
Right, absolutely. And then what we did find was that we were more essential based on, which we loved the fact of being able to provide this, is just help people have an outlet.
Sure.
As you guys know, with adventure rigs, people wanted to get outside. People wanted to do something. They didn't want to just be stuck in the house.
Yeah.
And so all outdoor activities just blew up.
Well, to be perfectly honest, we were freaking out when everything was being shut down because we were like, okay, there's not going to be any races. Everybody's going to be stuck at home, but what we found is that everyone just had more. A lot of people had more time to train, and then the people who had less time, or people had no time previously, quote unquote no time, then had time to get outside. And
I saw more people in March and April last year, going past our house, walking with their
That's what
families,
everybody said.
running.
They're like, I didn't even know I had those neighbors.
Yeah,
Where did those people come
we have,
from?
you know, CD Smith is right behind, which is a very highly trafficked road for runners, cyclists, all that. But it's like double time, you know, all last year.
Yeah.
So it was clear early on that people were putting it more of a priority to get outside and do some outdoor activities.
Yeah. And that's what we saw immediately at the end of March and April.
Yeah, I was curious what the time frame was on that.
Yeah, it was families wanting bicycles.
Okay.
You know, we had families of, you know, 4 and 5 and 6 coming in and getting a bike for mom and dad and all the kids.
Oh, wow.
Because they just didn't even have anything because everybody had been either busy with competitive baseball or soccer or cheerleading or whatever it is. And that's what they did. Well, when all of that stopped, they had all this time and they had all this time to spend together, and they didn't have any bicycles. So
I remember when I came in to get the 2 bikes for the girls. It was like, you were like, these are like the last 2 in the country.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
Give them to me. Take them. I'll take them. If not, I'm going to resell them on the black market.
The people buying up the PlayStation back in the day.
Right. We had to make sure your cute girls were taken care of, man.
They love them.
So then demand went way up. And so supply obviously went way down. So
did you have people, did it get to the point where people were coming in wanting maybe a lower end, but was like the lower end stuff or lower price point, I won't say lower end, lower price point, was that what was going first, or did you see it across the board?
It was across the board, but probably the entry level price points, you know, were going first.
So then did you get those people that are like, hey, this isn't in my budget, but it's available, and so now they're going for
We did. And we had people, which I think is fantastic, because now you're getting people who would have not bought a bike shop quality bike, buying something of quality. And
versus a Wally World bike.
Correct. And what we have found for 30 years is that it's all about your experience.
Exactly.
And so people would maybe buy a lower quality bike, not enjoy how it rode, not enjoy the experience, and they'd put it in the garage and never touch it again. So now at least they're getting a quality bike that they can really enjoy the experience. It shifts right, it brakes right, it feels comfortable. And so maybe cycling is something that they're going to continue with for years to come, because it's a great experience.
They're sitting there thinking, wow, this is more fun and enjoyable than I remember. And a lot of it could be the better quality bike.
I have, in fact, ridden a department store bike on the trails, and it was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get on even a lower price point, you know, name brand bike shop bike, and it is night and day.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, so
which is going to be a decent thing as we move forward in the conversation today. I mean, it all kind of ties together, right? Like, how do you get a person on the best bike for them, right?
Yeah.
So have you seen it stay? Has it stayed full throttle? I know the bikes are getting bought up like crazy. We knew that. And then
we got to a point where, you know, in our stores there was 20 bikes on the floor, you know, something like that. We just ran out of bikes.
What's typical?
100, 150, you know, depending on which location you're at. So yeah, we just basically just ran out of bikes, you know. And again, we were fortunate enough, but there were people who would come in and look at bikes, and we were busy on a Saturday, and they're just like, hey, you may want to hold your hand on that bike, because I'm telling you, we had people standing aside, like, if they don't buy that one, I'm going to buy it, you know. Because the supply just wasn't there.
So did it end up being like, you know, for what I hear, it was a lot had to do with like parts not being available to build complete bikes? Or was it just all across the board, frames weren't available, parts weren't available?
So
I know Shimano's just
impossible. All messed up. Yeah. They've got so much demand on them, being pulled in so many different directions, because they provide from the entry-level $600 bike up to the $10,000 bike parts.
So it's not like a campy who's doing the upper end stuff,
so I just can't imagine what that has to look like.
And nobody could have forecasted a global pandemic and the demand that it would have brought on.
Skyrocketing,
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So, for us, our manufacturers that like we sell Specialized and Giant, they can produce their frames, they can produce what they produce, but having to rely on those other parts like Shimano or SRAM or whatever, that's where it gets really, really challenging.
Gotcha.
And it's got even more challenging. Parts, when this first started, spring into summer, the parts that were really hard to get were repair parts. Low-end derailleurs, brakes. We ran out of tubes. There was a point where there were inner tube sizes that you could not get.
Really?
Yes. That somebody would say, hey,
It's probably for me flatting every time I was out riding my bike, because that's been the case for me in the past.
24-inch kids bike tubes, and we couldn't get any. They were out.
Huh.
Every single, and that's across call it 6, 7, 8 suppliers that we could get them from.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So then it went into the high-end parts.
Yeah.
And we're still dealing with that now.
Yeah, I was going to say, where's it sitting now?
It's still difficult. I mean,
So if someone's buying a bike right now, inventory at the stores, so say, road cyclist,
okay, so
want a upper end, maybe not top of the line road bike. What are we looking at?
very difficult.
Okay.
Very difficult. Yes.
Yeah.
Waiting list kind of things.
Gotcha.
We are very fortunate that at this moment we have a lot of spring, that kind of entry level price point, comfort fitness bikes right now that we planned. Karen and I planned really accordingly for that. These are bikes that we actually ordered in summer of last year that we're just now getting.
Okay.
So
because I dropped into Bikes Plus just last week, and a bunch of more of the hybrid cruiser style.
Yep.
Tons of those.
Yeah, which is perfect for this time of year.
Yeah, your green line riders, your cruise around the neighborhood with the family.
Yeah, but some of the higher end stuff, it is definitely hit and miss. And we're planning we already have orders in the system for this time next year.
Wow.
So getting special order items. So if somebody wanted to come in and order that high-end bike that is maybe not a color or size that we already have on back order, it's just I can't do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So are you seeing an increase in, and I know we're kind of going down a rabbit hole here, but
I know.
like people...
Our 2-hour talk.
I know, right? So are you seeing people that come in that maybe are interested in a new bike, but you just can't get one? And so are they going with maybe I'll get a new wheel set, or what else can I do performance-wise? Are you seeing
some
that at all,
are, some are, and then some of them we're just trying to help them out. We're trying to provide. We know that at this point, if it's something specific that they want, we just really can't get it. So we're working with them to help them find it somewhere.
Gotcha. Okay.
And what's happening though is that we have entered into not just selling in the Memphis market. We have people driving over from Atlanta.
Yeah.
We have people driving over from Little Rock and from Dallas, getting bikes that we have in our inventory because Dallas may not have them or Little Rock might not have them. But then we have people who were from Memphis going over there
having to do the same
because they have something that we can't get.
Gotcha. Okay.
Gotcha.
Well, let's segue into the that was the intro.
Well,
how long did that last?
it was only 20 minutes.
30 minutes.
Yeah. So, realistically, with people looking at, there's just been time. I've seen a huge uptick in people. We've had entire cycling teams form this year.
Oh yeah.
That have 40 plus 50 people in them, and
some of them have gone through 4 different bikes
already.
Yeah.
And so, with the onset of the Ironman in town, a ton of people have jumped into triathlon that were not previously maybe even active, and so there's a lot of questions. I'm sure you get a lot of questions on what bike is best for the scenario, the person. So let's just kind of break down some of the questions first that you ask people, and then we'll go into kind of some specific scenarios on
the biggest thing is customers don't necessarily need to hear me talk or hear our sales staff talk. They don't. We need to find out what that customer wants to do and then guide them in the right direction. You know, we don't need to have them walk in and we just immediately tell them like, this is what you need.
Yeah. Here's what I have in stock. This is the bike you need.
Exactly. So, well, you know, first thing is just, you know, how do you want your experience? Like, what are you looking to do? Where are you wanting to ride? So, you know, we're going to find out if they're wanting to just ride on the green line, if they're going to stay on the pavement, you know, and they're just going to ride on the green line and around the neighborhood.
So like what surface?
So surface,
Surface,
what kind of surface? And then if they say, well, I kind of want to do a little bit of off-road and on-road, well, let's really talk about what that off-road scenario looks like, you know, because it's different for different people. They may think, you know, just going off onto like a hard packed dirt gravel road versus riding, you know, the actual trails at
with
Wolf
roots
River.
and rocks. And,
Correct. Yeah. So totally different scenario. So we kind of need to get a really good idea so that, you know, we're not putting somebody on a trail bike, a mountain bike, that when really they just want to ride on the green line. And they want to be comfortable. So, you know, we ask them like, how important is comfort versus performance, you know, for them?
So like,
performance is number one, right?
Yeah.
Always.
I mean,
full gas.
Always.
I would just get a Stumpy and ride it on the green line. It's so comfortable.
Right, exactly. And we do have some people who choose to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
So, you know, surface one, and then I would think, you know, sport, if they're like into a specific sport, obviously.
Absolutely.
Kind of goes along with service.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say they you know, we've got the fitness people that can be kind of easy, you know. Now there are quite a bit different types of hybrid bikes, you know, fitness comfort bikes. So if someone wants to still go out and do 20 miles, but be comfortable, there's a different type of hybrid fitness bike for that.
Gotcha.
Same thing with mountain bikes. You know, if somebody is just going to go ride the Wolf River local trails, they may just want a hardtail mountain bike. But if they want to go and spend some time, you know, we've got a great trail system here with Stanky Creek, Wolf River Trails, Shelby Farms, Herb Parsons, but we've got such an enormous opportunity for the trails over in Arkansas. You know, over in Little Rock, Hot Springs, Bentonville.
Very different trail systems.
Correct. So we find a lot of people who want to buy a bike that's suited there that they can also ride here in Memphis as well too.
Yeah. So surface sport, distance, like how much time are you going to spend on this thing at once?
Yeah. So talking to them if they want to do, if they've signed up for the Ironman, you know, half Ironman, and then what that looks like to them. Is that something, do they consider themselves a triathlete? Or do they want to do this triathlon, but also have a bike that they can go do group rides with and things of that nature?
I think that's a very important thing. You know, you get a lot of the people that are more beginners to the sport, and in general, we would recommend road bike first.
Yeah, like, absolutely.
If you're going to be riding mostly on the road, you want to be competing on it, road bike can get you into road events, group rides, triathlons, time trials. It's not going to be the fastest necessarily in the triathlon or the time trial, but most versatile, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then adding on, so once, you know, kind of the way I guess most people end up doing it, and the way I did it personally was like, once I got to where I knew going to a more triathlon time trial specific bike was going to give me that performance edge, and that's when I jumped to that other bike.
Yeah.
In that specific scenario, and then we can kind of jump into some specific scenarios, but in that specific scenario, whether it's like a newer triathlete, I almost always tell them to get a road bike first. Yeah. Because if you find out that you don't in fact enjoy triathlon, you'll still have that road bike to go do group rides, Grand Fondos, you know, stuff like that, which is tons of fun.
Yeah.
You may find that you like that more. You know.
And then there's different types of road bikes. So if somebody, if that's the case, if they say, I think you're right, a road bike is the right way to go instead of a triathlon specific bike, then there's different types of road bikes to look at. And so we've got to make sure we put them in the direction of where they can still have a good experience doing the triathlon, but on a road bike, because there's endurance road bikes, there's then there's your aero road bikes, and then there's a true just traditional road bike.
I think there's a lot of
That's why we end up with 18 bikes.
Yeah, you're right.
And
N plus one.
N plus one.
So like fitting a lot of bikes, I see a lot of like people who maybe didn't get on the right bike for them. And a lot of times what it boils down to is they're predominantly riding group rides and like centuries and long rides and stuff like that. But they want to be fast. So like their like main focus is kind of conflicted. So a lot of times they end up getting on like a aero road bike, and the geometries are so aggressive on those bikes. Whereas if they would have done something a little bit more endurance or something like that, they're probably going to be way more comfortable in the long term, have a better experience. And then down the road, they'd probably buy a race bike anyways, that type of thing.
And do you find that a lot where someone comes in and they already have the bike in mind, even though if you're going through the questions with them and you would point them in another direction? How does that?
Not as many as you would think. Okay. I think most people are open, and we try to have that open conversation with people. Yeah. And we don't try to just steer them in the direction of what we have in stock.
For sure.
It's a little bit more challenging these days. Yeah. But prior to this, we had absolutely no problem special ordering a bike from one of our manufacturers that had it in stock if we didn't already have it, because that is, you want to get them on the right bike. We are a retailer. We do want to sell bikes, but we want to create a community, and we want people, more people out there riding. And so if we can get somebody on the right bike and we see them, you guys are just as involved as I am. I'm out there on the Memphis Hightailers group rides on Tuesday night and Thursday night. When we see those people out there, we want them to have a good experience.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
We want to know their name, and so.
Yeah, generally, it's if you get the person on the right bike the first time, they have a good experience, they're going to come back for the next bike.
Sure hope so.
Most of the time, reciprocity does, you help them out and you put the time into getting them on the right bike, and then maybe something about what they're doing changes, and then they'll get,
and plus one.
I mean, honestly, I bought my first road bike from Karen, whenever back in 2008, 7, and, it was one of those scenarios.
She should have upsold you on a pump. That's what she should have done.
It's a good story.
We don't have time for that one.
Part of that tube shortage came down to Dale in 08.
I almost quit cycling the first 2 weeks because I couldn't do a ride without popping a tube because I would never pump the tires.
Oh, so we see that a lot.
Yeah.
She probably did. You just probably didn't listen.
Yeah,
she probably did try to sell you.
Well, I was broke as a joke then. See? I mean, buying the bike at whatever it was then, $680, was a huge expense for me.
And now I got to buy a $40 pump, really?
Yeah.
Not heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what happened is I got into the bike. She helped me get into the bike that was the right bike for me at the time. With what I wanted to do, and I was getting into triathlon at the time, and it was a better option to do a road bike first. But it was one of those things where I got into it, fell in love with the sport like that, and I think I owned that bike for all of about 6 months, and then I bought a nicer bike. A much nicer bike. I justified the upper level bike because I was all in.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have a good experience the first time, it doesn't really pay to put somebody on a bike that they're not going to enjoy. It's not the right size for them. It's not the whatever.
Yeah.
And then the enjoyment drops, and you just lost a person in the sport. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So what are with the uptick, like Bryant was saying. There's been an uptick in cycling in general. We've seen obviously a lot of road cyclists, but gravel has been an explosion, I would call it, over the last couple of years. It kind of crept in, and then once I would say like the Dirty Kanza came around, and it kind of
Unbound?
Unbound, whatever you want to call it.
Garmin Unbound.
Yeah. When that
can you edit?
kind of,
can you go back and edit this?
I'll dub that over. I'll dub it. once that kind of took off and got a lot of press, like I feel like gravel just exploded.
Yep.
You started having world tour riders that were bringing more eyeballs to it just by showing up.
Yeah.
I think helped as well.
I think gravel has really taken off, and hopefully nobody takes this the wrong way, but you have guys who are road cyclists who can do something more like mountain biking or have that experience that they maybe just don't feel comfortable mountain biking. But they can have that more laid back kind of cool environment of gravel racing and kind of have that same feel. And that's kind of what gravel has done for a lot of people in the road side of things.
Yeah, and I think it's a mass start race, uncategorized. They still do age group rankings, but like mass start race, uncategorized. Everybody starts at the same time. And for the most part, it's about finishing, right? Yeah. And because most of these courses are difficult just to...
Even when you flat, it's about fixing that flat and finishing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, depends. Depends.
Yeah.
Unless you're just going for that dub.
Yeah. unless your vest goes into your rear derailleur.
Right.
That's also a problem. I've had my share of problems in the gravel realm.
Brian's gravel career is
Speaking of, I need a tubeless wheel set. Running tubed is a bad idea.
But so when somebody comes in the shop talking about, like, maybe they don't necessarily have like gravel in mind immediately, but are there any situations where you would like recommend a gravel bike to somebody who doesn't necessarily know that they want to get into gravel?
Yeah, absolutely, because the gravel geometry is a little bit more relaxed than a road bike. A little bit longer wheelbase. So if somebody's not necessarily looking at mixing it up in sprints on group rides or racing,
crit racing,
or something along those lines.
Take my gravel bike on group rides. I mean,
off the back, he takes off the back.
And so my legs blow up.
Yep, exactly. So it does. It definitely works for people. It's having that wider tire. Generally most of them have 38C at least with tires. Gives riders stability that they want and the comfort that they want. So absolutely. And so we're seeing a lot of people who will buy those gravel bikes and actually never touch the gravel.
Gotcha.
They're kind of considered more of just an endurance geometry type.
Well, I'm sure there's got to be some conversation, because now with disc brakes becoming popular on road bikes as well, which allows for more clearance. I mean, you have an option for someone who wants to do some dirt riding, depending on conditions. That could be on a road bike, could be a gravel bike, could be a cyclocross bike. I mean, there's a lot of options out there now.
Oh yeah.
So I'm sure the conversation you have has got to be, you got to drill down a little deeper.
You kind of do. And that's why you start kind of asking those specific questions, because a lot of times customers don't even necessarily have thought about that until you ask them that right question, and then you can kind of really hone in on what
didn't realize it was even an option kind of thing. So like I race on a cross bike, gravel, just because that's what I had. Can you just give us a really quick difference between, say, a cross bike and a gravel specific bike?
The geometry is a little bit different. The cross bike is a little bit more aggressive geometry. It'll typically have steeper head tube and seat tube angles. It'll have a shorter head tube stack. It just has that kind of little bit racier feel. Where
still has the higher bottom bracket
height. Yep, sure does. Where the gravel bike has that longer wheelbase, almost where you're sort of sitting in it. Now that there's so many different gravel bikes, some brands like Cervelo's, Aspero is probably a little bit more race-oriented gravel bike than, say, the Specialized Diverge.
Gotcha.
So there are differences even within the gravel bikes.
That's a good like comparison of like the longer wheelbase, slacker gravel bike, the Diverge, and then the Aspero is much more compact, racy, twitchy, like, quick handling type.
Yeah. So like for me, I have an Aspero. I prefer that personally over Diverge because I just kind of like that. I also ride a cross-country XC race mountain bike because I like that better than, say, a stump jumper, which is more of a trail bike.
Gotcha.
So it really just depends on the feel of what people like.
That brings up another question. So like, let's talk mountain biking because we don't have the massive topography out here or the breadth of flow trail and stuff like that somewhere like Bentonville does.
Shout out to Bentonville.
Yeah. But when would you put somebody on something like what's your main question for full squish versus hardtail?
That would full squish equals full suspension. Mountain bike for
our, well, personally, I'd ride nothing but a full suspension, but
yeah, me too.
Right. So budget obviously plays into account there a little bit. But I also have a hardtail single speed mountain bike that I've been having a ton of fun on this winter.
And plus one.
Exactly. That's exactly.
And then we got fat bikes that we can bring in the conversation.
Exactly. I guess it just really depends on what their goal is. You know, if speed is something that they're really looking for, even if they're not necessarily racing, but if they're wanting to go fast, then they want something like a cross country race, hardtail or full suspension. If they want something with more travel, then that's something more like the stump jumper. And that's what changes is in the full suspensions. So like the Epic, for example, has 100 millimeters of travel, where the stump jumpers have 130 and 140 millimeters of travel of that suspension. So obviously those can take bigger hits, bigger drops off of rocks and things of that nature.
Does skill level come into that? So like someone who's maybe, like I'm notorious for riding very heavy on my bikes. As opposed to some people, you know, great bike handling, very smooth. I mean, can they get away, or would that be someone you would steer towards not needing as much suspension? Whereas me being more of a bruiser on a trail, like you'd want to put...
You just need to slow down. You just need to slow down a bit, man.
Stop ramming stuff. Slow down and stop ramming stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
But does like bike handling ability skill level, or is it more like weight performance?
Yeah. I mean, handling you just have to work on. Wheel size can make a bigger difference as far as handling. Tire width, obviously, the wider tire, the more control and traction you're going to have. There's different types of tires. Some that have obviously bigger knobs and more traction than something that's more of a race-oriented tire. Even though they may both be like a 2.3 width. There's different wheel sizes. There's 27.5 and 29 inch. I'm a huge believer of 29 inch wheels. And you're seeing more of the bikes all kind of go into 29 inch anyways.
Because it was 26, right? 26,
it was 26.
27.5 and 29. And then
I actually owned a 69er. The top fuel.
Exactly. Right. But obviously the 27.5 with a smaller wheel diameter can give you better control in tight turns and those type of situations. But the 29 is just so much more efficient.
Rolls over everything.
It just rolls over everything. Larger contact point. With every pedal stroke, you're turning a bigger wheel. So just a lot more efficient.
So maximum enjoyment of, say, a trail system here, 29er.
Absolutely.
Full suspension. Come in and say you want full squish?
Well, so again, it all depends on the experience and the budget. You know, you don't want to, somebody that wants to spend $800, they can still go have a great experience, but they're going to be, in a hardtail type bike. And they can really enjoy that experience on the trails around here. And it's really, control and comfort. And we have a lot of roots on a lot of our trails here. So that rear suspension allows you to pedal through those obstacles, absorb those roots that you're going over and things of that nature.
Which I think is huge because pinch flats, or I guess a lot of people are going more tubeless.
They're all going tubeless.
But if you're dealing with flats because you are ramming into stumps, rocks with your back tire, your enjoyment level is going to go way down. And that bike's not going to get ridden. So spending that extra money and going with something that's got...
we just want to be careful because obviously the three of us ride a lot.
We do.
And so...
I remember my first bike, I went in and I was expecting it to be my first road bike. And I was expecting it to be like similar to my mountain bike price that I had bought, 8 years earlier. So I was expecting like $300-ish. And I was like, I could probably go to 6 to get like a mid-level. And I walked in and it was like $620 for the very entry level, and I was like, what? And there was bikes that were $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and at the time I just thought it was totally crazy.
Absurd.
And now, like, you get used to those.
Yeah, exactly. But just to say,
exactly,
for all the viewers out there, that you can have a really good experience, sub $1,000 hardtail bike. So
yeah. Well, cool. Any other scenarios that you've ran into as far as like when somebody comes in, they have like no idea. They just say, "I need a bike."
We get that all the time.
What's the first? You ask them budget first? Is that like?
Yeah, I personally do. And it's not because I just want to completely hone in on that budget, but I want to be conscientious. I mean,
that's how you can rule out most.
Yeah,
put you in a bin, right?
And you almost kind of want people to feel comfortable. You know, I don't want them to come in, and that's the one thing, we don't want people to come into our stores and feel intimidated.
Yeah,
because they can walk in and see that bike sitting there that's $5,000, $10,000, and go, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing here?"
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes it sort of breaks the ice, you know, and allows you to just be like, absolutely, that budget.
We can find you a great bike at your price point.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think, and honestly, I know very few people who got into cycling and started on a mid to upper level bike. Yeah. Everyone dips their toes in the water with the like sub $1,000 level.
Oh, for sure.
Even if it's, whatever. I mean, they jump on a bike.
Yeah, let's see if I like it.
I'm not sure I like this.
Yeah.
But then generally, 6 months later,
they're hooked.
They're hooked.
Yeah.
As soon as they get on a faster group ride and they think it's the bike that's holding them back,
exactly.
They're back in the shop.
Yep.
What can I do to this bike?
What can I do? Those guys beat me on CD Smith. I need some carbon wheels or something.
What would you say as far as upgrading frame versus upgrading components?
That's a good question.
How would you steer a person there?
Putting you on the spot, John.
No kidding. I think you're going to find more performance by, say, upgrading the frame. I think that's where transfer of power is greater. Obviously, as you move up to a better quality frame, you're gonna have stiffer bottom brackets, and that's what most of that is all about. When your power's coming out of your cranks, it transfers into the wheels.
Less lateral flex in the frame, more goes down into the pedal, into the drivetrain.
Yep. Components are important, but that's all relative. When you're going from, say, Ultegra to Dura-Ace, it's not as great of a jump as you're going from Sora to Ultegra.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on what people are looking at and where they need to kind of upgrade. But if you can go from, in my opinion, if you can go from aluminum frame to a carbon frame upgrade versus a jump up in component group, that's going to benefit you.
From like a Tiagra to a Dura-Ace.
That's going to benefit you more.
Yeah. So. I would agree there.
How's our time looking? I got more questions.
Shoot.
Depending on how this time's looking here. You good still, Chad?
Yeah, I'm good.
So I'd like to just kind of segue into like some pro tips from you. So like you got some pro tips. So you got a person who buys a bike, or you probably even see it amongst the racer crowd, right? Where the people are doing stuff, right?
That may be the worst.
That are doing stuff to their bike, or maybe don't realize they're doing stuff to their bike.
Too much chain lube.
Too much chain lube.
Too much chain lube.
You got to put a lot of lube on there.
No. I love selling chain lube, but I sell probably way too much chain lube.
Yeah. Okay, so pro tip number one.
I don't know what it is, but it makes people feel comfortable to drip lube on their chain before every ride.
Just squirt it on.
Before every
So what's
ride.
the proper pre-lube before a ride here? How often to lube a chain? Let's go there.
Man, in normal conditions, it's until you can hear your chain.
Okay.
And a lot of people...
So it gets the Tweety bird?
Yep.
Okay.
I bet that I probably lube my chain in the summertime twice a month.
Okay.
Once a month? I don't know.
It's because you're only riding 3 times.
Well, that's true. That's true. But yes, people lube their chain way too much.
And then, so what I do, tell me if I'm incorrect here, I lube my chain, but spin it a few times, and then I wipe it all off.
Yes.
Correct or incorrect?
Yes, but you probably already had too much lube on it to begin with.
Well, I do use the lube. I use the lube to clean my chain first, and then I
So if you
Then
have,
I lube it, and then I wipe it all off.
Right.
so if the pulleys on the derailleur are caked in grease and dirt, you're probably using way too much.
There was a ride, a ride to
I was on this
Rosemary
one.
training ride.
Yes.
That we love you, Andy. But if you're watching, but his bike completely locked up because there was so much caked on lube on his pulleys that he could not turn the pedals anymore. We had to get a stick on the
His
side
bike
of the
failed.
road and
I've
take it
never
all off.
seen so much gunk come off a pulley and cassette.
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
It was crazy.
Hey, what about salt? Like people that don't clean their bikes ever?
I've got this.
Yeah. So Dale's talking about salt from sweat.
Yeah,
So
salt from
let's
sweat.
talk about triathletes.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah,
I don't
do
know
it.
what it is. Some reason triathletes have more salt in their sweat than normal cyclists.
Unscientific.
Yeah.
We
Or
should
they
measure
just
this.
Is that
never
the chlorine
they just
from the pool? I
maybe.
don't know.
They just never clean their bike.
Well, that's true too.
That
And
it's like,
they're draped over it.
Yeah.
So they're draped right where it's all just dropping
Yes.
down
it's
into
not
the
all
nose.
salt. Half of
Yes.
it's like sports drink and goo and
I have
Some of
had
the nastiest-
triathletes' bikes that would not shift because the sports drink had gone underneath their bottom bracket and locked up their cables because it was so sticky. So
So a person like that, what should they be doing?
they should wash their bike.
After every ride, every week? Like, is that something?
Man, I mean,
Just rinse it and you're good?
yeah,
rinse
I don't.
And dry?
I personally don't have a problem with water.
Okay.
You will find that there are some mechanics that do not want to wash bikes.
Gotcha.
I don't personally have a problem with that.
Okay.
You need to wash them with a wide angle spray and not spend much
So
time
not power washing the bottom bracket?
Do not go to the car wash. There is somebody that I would mention, but let's not.
Oh, for real?
Do not go to the car wash.
oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you do not want to spray water into where the bearings are.
Okay.
But washing the bike is key, and keeping that bike clean will be a world of difference.
Your components just last longer. When,
I just do.
I mean, you could. I mean,
When you over lube regularly, they last a lot longer, right?
Yeah, yep. And service intervals. I mean, and this isn't just to get people to bring their bikes to the shop for service, but your bikes need more service than you really think that they do.
So what is a service check? What happens during a service?
So, I mean, there's obviously different levels of service. A tune-up that is the most common is going through the bike, and we actually take the bikes out and wash them.
Okay.
And then we make adjustments to the bike, true the wheels, adjust the brakes, adjust the gears. But then these performance athletes, they are putting so much wear and tear on those bikes and the sweat and the salt that at some point they really need the bike broken down to the frame and the bearings cleaned or replaced and lubricated and really built back up.
I usually do that like once a year. What is your recommended?
That's a good yes. Yeah. I would
Certain
totally
time of
agree
year
with
that would be best? Obviously, if someone hasn't done it in a long time, do it now. But
Well, in the winter time, obviously. That's the slowest time of year for our mechanics, so it's a lot easier to do that type of service because that's just not an hour type quick service. And then this time of year is when we start getting overloaded with service tickets from people who are pulling their bikes out of the garage and just want to ride. So those true, real performance athletes, thinking that through.
Is it true that if you bring a 6-pack of good beer that you can move up in the line?
Well, I would have to say that the 6-pack's good, but my guys really do like cash money.
Cash money better.
Cash tips are pretty darn good. I
can't pay your rent with a...
Well, it's not for me. Those mechanics are good.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
But, we do our best to service those that are really out there riding, that are performance type athletes.
All right, so we got...
But please do not bring the bike a day or two before the race. That's typically what we see
That's
a lot
when
of
we
times.
realize we're going to have something we need to address.
That's true. We'll still take care of you.
Yes.
That's when the 6-pack really comes
That's
in
when
handy.
it better be a 12-pack at least.
And cash.
What kind of lifespan can someone be thinking? So, like, chain? Is that what's going to go up most
You know,
often?
everybody asks that.
It depends,
and it all
obviously.
really depends. It depends on you know, how much power you're putting out, how much torque, what gear ratio you're running in.
How big of
If somebody wanted you know, roughly 3,000 miles,
Okay.
you know, somewhere in that ballpark.
cross chaining? How big of an impact is that going to have on wear and tear? Is that
It definitely has an impact on it. People should be more aware of it, but you know, it's kind of hard. Something hard to always pay
cross
attention
chaining
to.
is when you're in like the
Big.
big chain ring, tallest cog in the rear, or the small chain ring, and you get too low or too small, the smaller teeth in the rear, and you hear that rubbing on the. Especially when you're getting the rub from the front derailleur, you know, that lateral torque, and then also that friction there can start to wear on.
And what riders don't realize is that if they shifted into their small chain ring and came down the cog, they're actually going to get the same gear ratio as they would in the big and the big.
Yeah.
Yep. Any other pro tips? Or,
Pumping up those tires. Pumping up those tires.
I think we've probably gone over this before, but you know, it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit more complicated now with so many different tire sizes out there. But you know, I think most people, you know, unless you're like, I don't know, probably like 220 or above, safe to do like 100 to 105 in a standard 23, 25C tire. And then like if you're, you know, on the lighter side, you could probably stay a little bit below 100. If you're on the heavier side, you know, 105, 110 type thing.
But new cyclists, what they don't understand too, though, is that take a road bike, for example, as you put 100 pounds of pressure in there, the next day it's probably going to be 85.
Yeah.
And you feel it and it feels hard, but your chances of getting a flat just greatly went up.
They do, for sure, yeah.
So I had that conversation with a guy just on Tuesday, you know, and sold him a pump. And he
I tell you what, a good pump is well worth the. I'm about to go get a new pump.
Brian
I keep talking about it.
Yep.
Dale whines about my pump. I still know how to work my pump. He doesn't.
It's the worst pump on the face of the earth.
It was a great pump when I got it. I just got it back in 06 or 07, and it's been taken through the ringer for quite a bit now.
Yep.
Because I'm a firm believer in pumping your tires up before every ride.
Yep.
And a good pump makes it so much easier.
It does, and people don't realize that even though you're not going to 160 pounds of pressure, if the volume of that pump allows you to do that, getting to 100 is super easy.
Yeah.
You don't need the air pumping of your tire to be your warm up beforehand.
Well, and cheap pumps that you might get at a department store will only go up to about 90 pounds of pressure. And so that means you're only actually really getting it up to about 70.
And then you're leaking all your air out as you're trying to like take it off, and it's a big giant to do. Yeah. So good pump, I would highly recommend.
Yes.
Awesome. I mean, this puppy's about to lose it on us. So
it might be about time.
I know.
We appreciate your time and chatting with us about bikes. We love chatting about bikes.
Yeah, I think we could have kept going for a long time on this.
I think so too. We'll cut it off there.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll find another topic and get you back on later. But,
sounds good.
We appreciate everyone hanging out, listening, watching. We will get you guys next time.
Peace.
Adios.
Bye-bye.